Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Welcome to Big Blend Radio with Nancy Reed and Lisa Smith. We're the mother-daughter publisher team of Big Blend Radio and TV Magazine and Parks and Travel Magazine. And we're also full-time travelers on the Love Your Parks tour. You can keep up with all things Big Blend. Just go to BigBlendMagazines.com. And, today's show, we're very excited to have author and writer Lisa Braver Moss join us to talk about her unflinching new novel, Shrug. And it shares the story of the quiet rebellion and silent strife of a Berkeley student during the Vietnam era, and also addresses the impacts of family abuse. And it's out now on She Writes Press. You can get it on Amazon, all those great online places. But I encourage you to go to her website because she does a lot of writing. She's written another book as well. Go to lisabravermoss.com. So welcome to the show, Lisa. We love having Lisa's on. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm great. I'm really happy to be here and having this conversation.
Yeah, and your book starts out with having a shrug. Your young character and speaking from her voice, right? Which is so nice. So you can connect with her. A young girl, and this is for all ages in my mind, right? Dealing with this shrug. So tell us a little bit about the title and why you decided that was going to be the title.
Well, it's succinct.
Yeah.
It's 5 letters.
Yeah.
Once I came up with that, it just stuck, and it was clear that it was the right title for this book, because this book is so much not a shrug. It's such an emotionally intense book that I like the juxtaposition of the emotional, I want to say, depth of what this character is going through, and this gesture that most people think of as being oh well, or too bad, or I don't want to talk about it, or I don't know. So that's how I came up with it.
And it's that kind of like you just shrug it off, but there's something deeper, but you just kind of like keep moving. And when you're going through something really traumatic in life, especially when it's consistently drama, you kind of you keep shrugging it off, because if you keep looking at it, you don't want to look at it. You know what I mean?
Yes, I think that's interesting. That was not even my intent, but I think what you're saying is very interesting, that there's a way in which this character does just keep soldiering on, and she is kind of shrugging things off insofar as it's required for her to achieve and get done the things that she wants to do in life, because she believes that those things will help her in the future, like doing well in school and things like that.
Yeah, her name is Martha. So give us an overview of Martha and her family situation. And I mean, this is in the Vietnam War era, and I know Nancy will have some things definitely to talk about on the book. And because, you expect her to be, tie-dyed and running out, but she's got her own stuff going on. But what's her family situation? Because, even the story with her mom is so unique.
You mean with Martha's
Yes.
mother?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. She's in a very difficult family situation. She's the middle child, has an older sister and a sort of not much younger, but somewhat younger brother. And the father is unfortunately a batterer who just has an explosive temper. It's not related to alcohol or anything that's predictable. It's sort of by nature unpredictable. And the mother is arguably worse. So this poor girl is sort of stuck in the middle of this family, and she has the unenviable role of being her mother's favored child, which I say unenviable because it's such a difficult thing to be a favorite. It's not something we talk about or think about a lot, but it really, in many cases like this, I think a favorite means the child that's most easily manipulated by the parent. And I mean, that sounds awful, but it is intended to be awful. So she really feels very worried about the mother who's a battered wife, but the kids are also battered. And I think Martha thinks of the abuse of them, the siblings and herself, more as secondary to the mother's victimhood. So that sort of lays it out.
It's interesting because she ends up living with the dad and not the mom, which that's why I say that's that unique thing where normally the mother is like fiercely mama bear, I'm taking my kids with me and leave me alone. But in this situation, that's not so much the case.
That's right. And it's, you sort of see clues along the way, or at least I hope you see clues along the way, that this mother is not going to be able, that she's going to collapse. And she does collapse, and it's not in a very nice way. She's very cruel to her children, and including the so-called favorite, Martha. So she turns out to be really less capable of loving parenthood than this battering father is. So I kind of like the irony of that.
It's got to have not been an easy thing to write.
No, this was not an easy thing to write. It required a lot of digestion, a lot of different drafts. Once I got the teenage voice, once that sort of came to me, and the whole book kind of fell into place. But it was very triggering for me because Martha and I, the character in Shrug, Martha and I share some similarities, and so there were times when it was quite triggering to write. At the same time, it was very liberating to write.
It is. Whenever you go through any kind of rough situation, family drama, it can knock you down and spit you out. It's very difficult. And I know even with, Nancy and I have both been through our own things in life. And, even just doing interviews can trigger things of the past, and and you go like, oh man, do I have to look at that? But then every time you kind of do it, I almost feel like it's a step out of it in a way, because you cannot just shrug off family drama. You can't run away. There's physically run away for safety, or you're out of it. You're away from the family now. Because we all grow up and have our own lives, but it is always that lingering thing back there. And I think it's very important that you wrote it from Martha's voice, a young girl, because it's something that number one, I think it's very important because it's everywhere. Young girls, young boys are living in this kind of situation everywhere, and there's not very often a voice for them. And a lot of times there is no help, there's no therapy, and then if people intervene, it creates more drama. Never really helps a lot of times.
Can really be true.
And so I think it's important that they have this connection. Nancy, I know you going through, kind of a rough childhood, and at the same kind of era where your friends may be out smoking weed and playing tie-dye and Grateful Dead songs. You didn't do that.
No, I cleaned houses.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, my dad was really brutal. And my mother, sometimes I would wonder if she even had a brain. Like, she just was so ineffectual at just about everything.
Oh, dear.
And she just, I don't know, I think she gave up. Now, being older, looking back, I think she gave up really early, so that she, he never hurt her, but he sure hurt the kids. And he never stopped him. I remember once he got mad and he shoved her and she fell down, and he was mortified that he had done that, but it was okay to do that to all the children,
right?
6 kids. And so, and I always wondered about her, like, why don't you do something? The school counselors, social workers, my grandmother used to come and rescue my brother and I, because for some reason we were the 2 objects of most of the drama. And she would come and take us away for a while. So we went to 2 schools at the same time, and the school officials never figured it out. I think that Well, yeah, it was cool. That period of time, there sure weren't a lot of like hands-on at your schools like they are now. I think now if you were going to two schools at the same time, you'd get caught.
Right.
Somebody would figure it out and know, but it just seemed like nobody cared. They
Wow.
did, so we went to schools at the same time. We could be absent for like a month or two and just
Wow.
go right back into class, and people would say, well, where have you been? You're like, oh yeah, I was sick, and
But you really loved school, and like Martha really wanted
well,
to learn.
school was safe
That
compared
was
to
her
home.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, school was really, I couldn't wait to get to school every day, and I didn't want to leave because going home was like, oh man, it was nonstop, and so I identify with a lot of what's in your writing, and it affects kids and how they get along with other people. And if you have a parent who's continually in a bellowing rage, I see that depending on the child's age, when they're going and they're seeing this as an example, like I know my younger brothers copied my dad.
Oh God.
Yeah, and you could see that behavior until they got out of the house and they learned that that's not how you act. So that behavior was just, I used to wish somebody'd put him down, quite frankly.
Oh,
No, I
yeah.
really did, because I'm like, they kept putting dogs down in our house. Like, every time a dog got sick, put the dog down. I'm like, well, put dad in line there.
Oh my gosh.
I know, nice.
But
this is what I think is so important, is that a child gets a voice when they read this.
Mm-hmm.
It's in a way, even if they have to be, you have to be silent sometimes to save your own life, depending on how brutal it is. And even there's the emotional abuse. There's a manipulation, like you were talking about. But Martha's character, it's. I think it's very important because they don't feel so alone.
Yes, and
you mean the book?
Somebody does actually
yes.
understand.
Yeah,
Right.
Martha. Yeah, because I think that gives them, in a way, some feeling of not that they're not alone,
and that they're not the cause.
Well, that's that's a lot of work right there. It's so difficult, I think, for these children to not think of themselves, to not blame themselves. It's just a very common thing to have to feel a sense of responsibility as a kid in that situation, to feel responsible in some way, and to feel disappointed in yourself that you can't change things, and to be in that situation. I think in some ways, I mean, there really weren't a lot of resources back in the 60s of this kind of thing. It was a period that was I like to call pre-Oprah, or really it's pre-Phil Donahue really was the original one on TV that really wanted to address some of these family issues that were not being talked about, certainly not in the 50s and really not in the 60s very much.
Yeah.
But I think so. I think we have much more awareness now of these things, but the numbers are still pretty staggering. I mean, there's over childhood domestic violence, which is a thing. It's witnessing parents, violence between parents, or violence of one parent over another. Witnesses of that are that there's about 15 million children in the U.S. who have that experience, and about 40 million adults who are survivors of that experience.
Wow.
So it's pretty common. And of course, when you witness, if you are witnessing childhood domestic violence, if you're witnessing domestic violence in your childhood, there's a much more you're much more likely to also be suffering physical abuse yourself, which is certainly true of Martha, the main character in Shrug. Sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical neglect, emotional neglect. I mean, the list goes on. And so it really is I'm so grateful that you said that you feel that this gives a child like that a voice, that Shrug actually gives those kids a voice. I think is very, that's a wonderful feeling for me as an author to have, that's how it comes across. Because there are more resources now. I think it's a little bit of an easier time in some ways.
There's more resources, but the child, first of all, it's a huge mountain to climb to get past your parents. Okay, you really, I mean, it's hard, and not even knowing the right words to use.
Yeah, that's
always,
right.
And knowing who to trust, who are you going to talk to, what are you going to say, how are you going to say it, and what happens after. Like, I know when the school finally figured out what was going on in our household, and the social workers, we dreaded the social workers because things got 10 times worse as soon as they left.
Oh God.
No, and they didn't handle things very well. They really didn't, and I don't, I don't know what kind of schooling or education or whatever they had, but I always felt like, first of all, they should never have sent women to handle my father. They should have sent a man twice his size.
Oh, wow.
But it was always some little tiny blonde chick that was, well, it's true. They were just as scared as we were. I mean, really. And in his sort of defense, he was on a lot of drugs because he had a lung disease. So the doctors had put him on so many different narcotics that he was a raging lunatic, and he should have not even been in a household. He really shouldn't. And when he finally passed away, my mom got a letter of apology from his main doctor when they figured out how much narcotics they had put in his system.
And steroids.
Wow.
Yeah, steroids and prednisone and all these narcotics. But yet, I mean, he saw doctors every single week. Social workers came over all the time. And for years, and we used to like, oh no, here comes the social worker, hide, because you didn't want to be anywhere around because you were going to get the blame. And it just always amazed me how many adults came in and out of our house, and yet nothing was ever done.
Oh boy, that's terrible.
We didn't know how to say anything.
Well, don't you think that's what
got worse?
That's the interesting thing about you setting the book in that time frame?
Yeah.
Is because there wasn't really so many resources, and you've got to think about the adults now and the repercussions of if they didn't get any therapy, if they didn't get any treatment, and then it's almost like the cycle continuing.
It can. Absolutely. It certainly can. Yeah. I think in some ways, if there is alcohol involved, in a certain way, there are more resources. But if it's just other kinds of craziness, mental illness, extreme narcissism, all kinds of different things like that, it's a little hard to pin down. And so that's the situation Martha is in Shrug, is she can't confide in anybody about alcohol, for instance, because there is no alcohol. This is not what's going on. Because there's always, even in those days, there was Alateen, for instance, but it's not, Martha it would never occur to Martha to go to something like that, I don't think.
Right.
So.
Yeah, there's that whole stigmatism to things like that as well. It's like, trying to get help, and then, because then that's part of like owning up to something that it's not your fault, but it's like, once it's out of the bag, it's like your whole life, your whole life is going to change, where it's kind of like the devil you don't know versus the devil you do.
Yes.
know.
Yes.
And
exactly.
I think that's the important thing. And I again, like, for people to be able to identify with it and have that connection. And I think it's important, for adults to read it from a young girl's perspective. I think that's very important, so that they have some more understanding of, and can start to pick up signs even, I think.
Wait, what do you mean start to pick up signs?
To be able to, see in a young person that maybe this is going on at home, just kind of their personality,
Right.
maybe start to just kind of pick up on, okay, I wonder, and to understand, but understand from a young person's position, because it's all great to think in an adult's mind, to go into being a young person's mind, that's really important. That's what I love about it, is because you hear her mind chatter. And
Yes.
and that's very important, because we all have that chatter. But to be able to sneak in, so it's being the fly on the wall, you get a better understanding.
Well, thank you. That's high praise. Thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, you get us all in immediately. What was it that led you to? Because I know you do a lot of writing in general on parenting, Judaism, and families. And what was it for you that just said, "Hey, I'm going to start, putting pen to paper"? Is that something
Right.
you did as a kid, even?
I didn't do a lot of journaling or story writing as a kid. It really came to me more in my 30s that I loved to write. It just sort of it didn't click. I mean, I didn't have an easy childhood either. So it wasn't the kind of thing where it wasn't the kind of situation that the parents would say, "Oh, you seem to be talented in this. Why don't you pursue it?" It wasn't, there was nothing like that. So I really I really didn't have any sense of myself as a writer until I was really in my 30s. And but I had written other books. This book was always in the back of my mind, and I made a few attempts and it kind of wasn't working. And then, as I was mentioning before, once I really got the teenage voice and was able to write in that voice, Shrug kind of fell together. It kind of just came together. So, yeah.
Did you connect with any teenagers to kind of get into their
Well,
headspace a little bit, or to go most on your memory of being a child?
Mostly on my memory, and some I did consult with age peers of mine, because there were certain things that were expressions, for example, in the 60s that we don't use anymore.
Boss. No cell phones.
Boss. No, well, not just no cell phones, but we don't say, "Oh, that's so boss." Although I'm kind of trying to bring back boss, because I like it.
It's funny, boss. Ooh,
Yeah.
boss.
Yeah. But so it was more consulting on things like that with my age peers who were there, that kind of thing.
It's interesting, because it's such an interesting time, just with the music revolution, the sexual revolution, there's war, there's the movement of peace, and yet it's like what was going on out there must have felt like that for her. This is what's happening for me now,
Yeah. She's pretty much unable to connect with what's going on out there, and because she just does not have the bandwidth for any moral battle other than what she's fighting at home. And she is she is, of the children in Shrug, she is the most verbal about her displeasure with her father for his awful behavior. And with her mother to some extent too, although she's thrown for a loop when the mother abandons the family. She's not expecting it.
Yeah, that's something you don't expect.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why I said that was just, to me, like, what? You can't do that. Yes,
Right.
you can, apparently. And
Right.
it does happen all the time. But
Yes.
you always think about, like I was saying in the beginning of our conversation, like you expect the mother bear. But and I wonder, at the end of the day, how much energy, how people become very empty after this kind of thing that's repetitious, any kind of drama, you become an empty, worn out.
It's very draining.
It's very draining.
Yes.
It's really, really draining. And I think, from my personal background, I felt like my mother abandoned us before we were even born. She didn't leave. She was there, but there's all kinds of abandonment. She just didn't seem to be able. And then my mom and dad would look so happy together, and it just always made me wonder, what is going on in your mind that you can watch what he does to your own kids.
Yeah.
It just, and I still don't get it. I probably never will, but it's just how it was. And I think that I always found it really difficult to find the words when I was a kid to, the counselors would ask what's going on, where would you get that bruise, what's over there, why have you not been in school, all these questions. And actually defended your family. You didn't dare tell.
That's right. That's right.
Because first of all, you didn't know who to tell, who to trust, and what words to use. I always thought how did you say, what would you say?
Right. Right.
That
and
would
there's
get the right kind of action.
Right. Right. And there's a scene in Shrug where Martha goes to the principal because she needs a note for having missed a couple of days of school, and her mother refuses to give her the note. And so she goes to this principal of her school, and he just kind of says, here's your pass, go, and she's disappointed. She actually wants him to call her mother. She wants him to ask her more, but he's busy and he kind of misses it. So I think that does happen to these children. And especially I think the children who seem to be achievers are in some ways really fall through the cracks more than those who are acting out, because those who are acting out get the attention, and those who are, sort of suffering silently and trying to keep up with academics and trying to do everything right because school, I very much as a child felt the way you did, Nancy, about school, where it was my haven. It wasn't so much the content, it was more just the structure of being there and having it be a safe place. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
yeah.
I think it's important too, because we were actually discussing this on a Facebook conversation the other day, that in regards to like teen suicide it's on a rise, and you think about why, what is going on, and then they were talking about just in general that watch the strong people, don't ignore the strong people, because people think you've got to be, acting out like you're saying, and when people are acting out for attention, there's a reason for it,
Right.
But then the strong silent ones, they're the ones all of a sudden they're gone, or you know what I mean, you've got to touch base with those people and don't assume like, oh, so and so strong, nothing will happen. That's not true.
Right.
No.
Right. That's really a powerful point that you're making. Yeah. And I think that's, that was some of the reason that I really wanted to write this book.
How is it, where do you I know it's out and you're getting some feedback. You've got a lot of, very positive reviews of what you've done for good reason. But how many times do people go, okay, is this like a memoir? And it's not, but it's like that balance, how do you,
Right.
it's,
Right. Well, I wasn't sure for a while whether it was going to be a memoir or fiction. And I played with both. And as I was saying before, it was really the teenage voice that kind of made me realize, oh no, I have a novel here. And that gave me tremendous freedom because I could just fashion certain scenes and characters that would move the story along, and the story took shape independent of what had happened to me personally. And so, I mean, there's autobiographical stuff in there for sure. And yet I had the freedom as a novelist to take the book where it wanted to go, and not be constrained by, oh, what actually happened and what year was that, and then having to bring my siblings into it and say, do you remember this? Do you remember that? And it felt like that would derail me from this very demanding task of creating a satisfying read.
Oh, go ahead, Nancy.
I was just going to say, it's interesting when you talk about siblings, because in our family, depending on who you talk to, the memories are widely different.
Yes.
Widely different. So if I had to gather all my brothers and sisters together to say, okay, I'm going to write what our childhood would like, it would never happen.
Right.
Because you would have like 6 or 7 different books.
Or worse yet, get into an argument.
Oh yeah. Well, that would totally happen.
Normal, for sure. With at least one, my older sister was, I don't know, she sailed through this without it just, for whatever reason, I have my own theory on it, but my father never ever touched her, or
Huh.
she never got in trouble for
Yeah,
anything.
we have ideas
We
on
have
yeah. That
ideas on why that might be.
yeah.
But
But
Hmm.
it's interesting
say
that
it.
yeah, I mean, because you also talked about the favoritism part of it too, and I think
Yeah.
that's a dangerous
Well,
thing with
Yes.
parents having that
yeah.
favoritism. Um,
Well, also, I'm not saying she had an easy time of it either. She was mostly almost as if, let me put it this way, the other five of us look identical, and she looks completely different.
she
Oh.
looks, yeah, she's like from a different
Absolutely.
family, and there's
Yeah.
really good reason to believe that that could be. So anyway,
Yeah. And so she was never ever part of the discipline process.
Yeah.
Ever.
That's putting it kindly.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay because we found out that he had two other families anyway with kids and
At the same
all the
time. So
same
that's
Oh,
age.
wow.
I know. So that goes into a whole other topic. I want to get back to
yeah.
Shrug because, you know, the whole thing, if it was a complete memoir, I think it would also be very difficult to, because I know they whirl you around on book tours and everything. It's like you'd have to be tapping into that all the time. We know a musician we
Like
interviewed.
living it.
Yeah, and he wrote an album dealing with his parents' suicide and all
Mm.
kinds of things and alcoholism and all of this stuff. And then he was like, "Damn it, I need to go do another album because I can't do this anymore." But he still plays the songs and loves the songs and talks about things because he brings a lot of awareness to what he does. But he goes, "Okay, sometimes you got to switch it up now." And I think that's the same with what you've done too.
Mm.
Is you're able to tap into your past, which is good because you've made it really authentic and believable, and people can resonate from an authentic place.
Mhm.
But
Thank
it's
you.
I think it's good to do it also where it's fictional because you can also allow people to do what you've always have that hindsight too in life. Like I could have done it this way or that way. I wonder what have happened, and you get
Or
to
both
tap
ways.
that. Yeah, yeah. Do you like writing fiction versus nonfiction?
I do. Well, fiction is more difficult for me than nonfiction. So you really have to want it. I think if you're going to write a novel, you have to be pretty obsessed. You have to really, really want it because it just is. It's a long process. It's you're sailing away into unknown oceans and waters, and it's really it can be wonderful when it's going well. I mean, there's nothing more satisfying than when it's going well. But I love writing nonfiction because because of the concreteness, and you can control it a lot better than fiction. So I like both. I actually really do like both. But fiction is tough. Fiction, you have to tap into something very deep.
Would you ever do a sequel?
Oy vey.
We're like, all right, come on now.
I don't know that I would do a sequel. I don't know that I would do a sequel, but it's possible I'll write another novel. I don't know yet. As you were mentioning about the musician on the tour, it's kind of almost, it's hard to think of other things right now.
Yeah, you're in it. You're in that zone.
Yeah,
Are
that's
you
right.
going to do book clubs? Because I think this is such a good conversation starter, and it's an important conversation to be out there that needs, like you're saying, the millions of youth and adults that are affected by abuse in all levels, and also breaking those cycles, breaking those
Right.
chains. I
Right.
think that's really important what you've done. But do you see doing book clubs and that kind of thing?
I would love to do book clubs. I mean, I already have a few lined up.
Oh, good.
For the book. Yeah, but I'd love to do more. And because I think that's a wonderful, 8 or 9 or 10 people sitting around a living room and talking, I think is a really wonderful venue for talking about this book.
Yeah, it's intimate too. That's nice.
Right.
Yeah, and I think you'll find a lot of people, whereas when you're going through something like that, you think you're the only one. But later on, you find out that you're certainly, you may have felt alone, but you're not the only one who went through something like that.
Yes,
There's
I think
many.
that's such an important point, Nancy, because that sense of isolation and that sense of shame that goes with
That
it.
shame,
Oh,
that
yeah.
shame.
It's just so insidious. And I think figuring out that you're not alone is just such a powerful experience. And that's, that's what I would love to bring to people.
I think that's really important because that
Important.
shame it really affects self-confidence, and that can affect people's entire lives in
Yes.
job situations, doing your career, in other relationships. And so it's this silent poison that, self-esteem is, and it could go into narcissism too. It's going to go one of
Right.
these ways. And
Right.
I think that's this important thing of, okay, you're not alone. So therefore, and there are resources out there.
There are.
But how do you get the resources to the youth? That's where books like yours, like Shrug, to me is that starting point where it's like, hey, somebody else is going through this. And it's this intimate book. No one's pointing fingers. This is a story. You can have this relationship with that book and then start to read more like that, and maybe start to go to the library and say, hey, there's something over here. So I think it can lead someone, especially if it's the first book, this can lead someone into a place of help, and at a young age start to stand up and not have the shame at a young age, because that's crippling for the rest of your life.
Yes, it is.
The longer we take to get help, I mean, some people don't get help until, their middle ages, and they don't understand why they're having a midlife crisis. And it'll come from something as simple as not having the self-esteem. And it's not simple, like I just said, but it's one thing could do that.
Right. Well, it was tough because, Martha, I didn't want to write a book where the main character has a really strong sense of herself, a really strong self-esteem, because that's just not true to this character. And so the challenge in Shrug was really to make her a multidimensional character, make her sympathetic, and for me personally, to have compassion for this character, which was really a very that was a very powerful piece of it, of writing it for me as a person, because in order to portray that, you have to have a sympathetic main character. There's anti-heroes, of course, in literature, but they're still sympathetic in a certain way, and because otherwise you wouldn't keep turning the pages.
Exactly.
So the challenge was, how do you take this girl with crummy self-esteem for many reasons that the reader can discern, and make her lovable and sympathetic, and that was a really healing process for me. It actually was a healing process for me to do that work, to make her lovable, and by extension to make myself lovable at a different layer of it, for myself.
I think that's important. And the more, when she's multidimensional, that means that you're going to be able to tap into someone's psyche somewhere, because they'll understand that with their personalities and who they are. They're able to connect, gives you more opportunities to connect. That's why we're the blend. A little bit of variety.
Right. The big blend, the very big blend.
Right. A very big blend, yes. It has been such a pleasure chatting with you and getting this important, this important topic out there. I think it's always an important point.
Thank you.
Really respect what you've written, and I want to give everybody again. The book is called Shrug. It's by Lisa Braver-Moss, and it's through She Writes Press. It's out now. You can get through Amazon, all those great places. You can go to Lisa's website, though. It's better, lisabravermoss.com. We want to thank JKS Communications, who sets us up with really good author conversations all the time. We've been doing this for years with them, and they've also assigned us to a literary story project as we travel the country to find literary stories, and we're pretty amazed at what we have found so far. Everyone from John Steinbeck to James Michener, so you can follow that at loveyourparkstour.com. Our shows air Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and Sundays, so you can keep up with them at bigblendradio.com. You can listen as they go live or later on, and also check out our author interviews, just like our conversation with Lisa today, at blendradioandtv.com and in Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. We always like to play music for our guests, Lisa. And your song today is a song that we play this quite a bit for these kinds of conversations. It's called Lessons of My Father. It's by Jeff Kossack, and he recorded it with the Tallman Group on their album 12x6. You can keep up with them at jeffkossack.com, also tallmangroup.weebly.com, and go check it out because it really tells the story of his father and him. His father and him didn't always see eye to eye in many ways, but he also followed up with another song, Closure, because after climbing Kilimanjaro, he went and had a beer in a bar and suddenly realized, I'm done with that now. So I just want people to know that there's a second song out there because you're going to want to hear part 2.
Thank you so very much. It was a lovely interview. I really enjoyed chatting with you, Lisa, and you, Nancy. I just really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your writing.
I remember the lessons of my father. He used to tell me, son, there ain't no luck. You best find the tree and shake it, manufacture it or bake it, if you're ever gonna hope to make a buck. Failure was no option, and fear was just a word. Remembering the day I learned to swim. It was on the banks of Shaver Lake. He said it was for my own sake. Then he picked me up and he threw my ass right in. Lessons of my father. No fear. And my mother was not a fearful woman. Still she spent most her life living under this man's thumb. And my sister left home early. His demeanor was so surly, leaving me to face the ugliness to come. Like on my 16th birthday, he came a-looking for a fight. He said, I know you'd like to try and knock me down. I felt the wind sail by my fist, but I was slow, I knew I missed, and I woke up lying broken on the ground. Another lesson of my father. No fear. Play it. I remember the lessons of my father. I think about him every single day. He mostly was a bully, but at times his heart was full. And I love you were just words he could not say. And failure was no option, and fear was just a word. 300 walk with me behind his hearse. But the biggest thing he taught me was the father I should not be. Always leading by example, but in reverse. Lessons of my father. No fear. Lessons of my father. No fear. Lessons of my father. No fear. I remember the lessons of my father.